Getting up early and coming to this session. What I'm going to be doing is a 45-minute version of a class that I typically teach for 90 minutes to older adults in Ocala, Florida, where I live. And I teach it in a longer version because there's actually some hands-on where I actually get them started identifying some of their digital asset categories. And I'll talk about that worksheet, and you would be able to use that with your clients. I did upload the slides and the handouts to the AFCPE platform, so you should be able to access everything. Okay, let's start out with a question. What exactly is a digital asset? When you hear that term, what do you think of? Anybody? Okay, crypto. Okay, Bitcoin, Ethereum, that kind of thing. What else? Websites.
Music, movies.
Yeah, music, movies, photographs, you know, all kinds of creative works that might be stored digitally. Anything else?
E-commerce.
Okay, e-commerce, all the retailing sites and shopping online. Anything else?
Anything has a value of that digitally.
Bingo. Yeah, bingo. So really, that's what a digital asset is. It's any personal information, and I'm going to walk you through all the different categories that's stored electronically, and it could be stored on a computer, or it could be on a cloud server. You might have it in a Dropbox or Google Drive or something like that. So you can see on the picture there that we're looking at social media, we're looking at financial institutions, we're looking at organizations. For example, every time I take a CFP CEU exam from the Journal of Financial Planning, I log into FPA so I can take the exam and get that credit. Again, financial institutions, government organizations, Social Security, companies that you did business with, your insurance company, peer-to-peer, you know, just everything. So that's what we're really talking about. So a couple questions that I often ask my students, and I'm going to ask you in just a minute. How many digital assets do you own? So I'm going to give you three categories. Think about this. How many of you think you have less than 50 digital assets? Okay, one person. How many of you think you have 50 to 100? Not too many. How many people think you have over 100? Yeah, exactly. I do too, I know, for sure. So we're talking about lots of digital footprints in different categories of our lives, who we do business with, who we get benefits from, where we put our money, all those various categories. So some of your digital assets have monetary value. You know, your bank account, for example. Some of them have sentimental value. For example, your photo storage or your music storage. And for a lot of people, your social media is your photo album. You know, think about it. If you're active posting on Instagram or Facebook, and they store your photos and they send you the memories every year of what you did 2 years ago or whatever, that's all photo storage, and that's all in a digital platform. So you can have monetary value, and you can also have sentimental value that you can't put a price on it, but sometimes those digital assets are the most important because they're kind of priceless. Okay, so a couple things. How many digital assets do average Americans have? Well, I couldn't find anything that said the exact number of digital assets. The best I could come up with is one article that talked about the fact that the average American has 25 what they call discrete logins, which means kind of like unique passwords. But that's kind of not a good monitor because so many people, even though we're not advised to do so, recycle the same passwords for a lot of their accounts. So just having 25, you may have 200 accounts, but you're using the same passwords for many of them. And they've also found that it's understated for people with higher incomes because, again, they tend to have more accounts and, you know, more of a digital footprint out there. So the best way, the only way really, that you can find out how many digital assets you actually have is to do an inventory, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. Then I look for the average value of digital assets, and I did find an article from Kiplinger's on that. And it said that the average American has $55,000 in digital assets. But again, they said that for higher income people, wealthy investors, it's going to be a lot more because their accounts will be larger, and obviously the value of the digital assets will be larger. So the only way that you're really going to know the monetary value of your digital assets is to do a net worth statement. You know, assets minus debts, and then just look at all of those things that are on the asset side of your net worth statement that are digitally stored, and you'll be able to get an idea of what the monetary value of your digital assets is. Okay, what you don't want to be is this person. I don't know if you can see it all the way to the back. There's a funeral service going on, and the preacher is saying, if anyone's interested in taking over Ed's Instagram account, see me after the service. You don't want to be in that scenario. Okay, so these are some questions that I start off the class when I'm teaching older adults, some questions that people kind of need to ask themselves. You know, what are your digital assets? And I'll teach you a process and show you some tools to identify them. Do you have a list of those digital assets? Do you know how to access them? Does your family know how to access them? Does your family know what to do with them? You know, for example, if you pass, do you want to have your Facebook account be kind of a tribute memorial legacy account, or do you just want the account to be closed? And what will happen to these digital assets if you become incapacitated or die? Okay, so a little bit at the end, I'm going to talk about some recent estate legislation that's gone national that addresses digital assets in people's estate planning documents. Okay, so these are really key questions. Okay, now let me tell you a story. And this is how I really got involved in this work. And you're welcome to share my story, because sometimes people learn best from stories and are more motivated to act when they hear a story. Okay, so the top left-hand corner, that's me and my husband. We had just moved to Florida, and we were standing outside a restaurant and took a picture. I kind of like that picture. And then on the top right-hand side, that's my husband with his, at the time, 4 siblings. Sadly, one of them has since passed, so now he only has 3 living siblings. But the story, and then the bottom picture is me with my sister-in-law. So let me set the stage. On December 15th, 2014, my husband's brother, Jerry, died. He was 78 years old, and he passed. And the whole family converged in upstate New York, where they lived, for a weekend of the memorial service and, comforting my sister-in-law and everything else. Well, Jerry was tech savvy, 78 years old. He was a computer guru. And the way he became a computer guru is he had 2 ultra tech savvy sons. One son is the IT director for a chain of boutique hotels in upstate New York. The other one is in charge of bombs, ballistics, and cybersecurity for the Southeast United States, for TSA. I mean, you don't get much more tech savvy than that, right? And so they taught him everything he knew and got him all digitized, all their bank accounts, everything was online. Lucy does nothing with computers, other than she does use Facebook. We keep in touch that way. She likes to play games through Facebook, but she had nothing to do with any of the digitization of their accounts. Okay, so anyway, we're sitting around that weekend. It was like 3 or 4 days. And one of the older sons, the one that's with the Southeast United States TSA, was the executor of the estate. And he lived in Arkansas and really wanted to kind of get started on some of his duties as executor while he was still there. And they realized that nothing was written down. Nothing. Jerry hadn't left Post-it notes. He had nothing written down, or at least they couldn't find anything that was written down, right? So they're off in a corner, excuse me, they're off in a corner with their 2 laptops and trying to basically hack into his information. And at one point they said to me, Barb, can we have your iPad? Because I had brought my iPad that weekend. So that's why I have the pictures of the 2 laptops and the iPad, my red iPad. And somehow, between those 2 laptops and the iPad, they got into the accounts and got the information that they needed. Was it legal? No. Could they do it? Yes, because they had the tech skills to be able to do that, right? So I'm observing all of this in real time as it's going on, and I just thought to myself, wow, it shouldn't have to be this hard. And then I also said to myself, wow, I don't know that I have a real good system of having everything written down. So at the time I was working for Rutgers Cooperative Extension, and I just created a worksheet that to this day is up on the Rutgers Cooperative Extension website. If I had to do it over again, I probably would have added more spaces for each category, so now I'm writing on the back of it and everything. But I created this worksheet just to get my own information down, and then to help the clientele at Rutgers use it for their personal information as well. So I put the file in the handouts for the conference, and you can also go online at Rutgers if you want copies, or send the link to your clients if they, you want to give them a tool to use. So it's 5 pages long, and it's fill in the blanks. And what I always tell people is it's going to probably take you at least 4 or 5 hours, maybe much longer. Those of you that raised your hands and said you had 100 or more digital assets, it's going to take a while to complete it, because basically what you're going to do is go through all your accounts, kind of back test all of your usernames and passwords and log in, and then write down any information so you have it written out for yourself. So it's going to take some time. And what I strongly suggest is that as you're doing that, as long as you're going to be doing this anyway and logging into your accounts, make sure that you're upgrading your security settings at that time. Make sure, particularly on your financial accounts, that you're putting in some kind of barrier, two-factor authentication, so that it's not just the username and the password that will get, excuse me, I'm battling cold, not just the username and password that will get you in, but there's going to be some kind of additional type of barrier, whether it's a challenge question, whether it's a text, code texted to you or emailed to you, just something. And then that's going to take the process a little bit longer too as you're doing this. So it's going to take some time to really get your entire digital asset inventory completed. And that's okay. It doesn't have to be done in one sitting. You can do it over a period of time. But that's the tool that I created. And it was really just born out of watching the frustration that the 2 nephews had trying to access the account, and realizing that, the rest of America doesn't have 2 cybersecurity experts in their family to hack into, accounts. So anyway, that's how I kind of created that. So again, this is just a graphic that shows 2-factor authentication. And I was explaining this in one of the classes that I taught in Ocala, and I had a student in the class that said, oh, that's so much, takes so much time, and oh, I hate doing all that, and I just want to log in. And I said to her, well ma'am, you have a point. It is a hassle. But on the other hand, if you experience identity theft, you're looking at about 100 hours of time to undo the damage, and the FTC report, and contacting creditors and bankers. I would much rather spend 5 or 10 seconds on the front end than to have to deal with hours on the back end. So again, it's one of those things you can take care of this as you're doing the inventory, and then you're kind of dovetailing the process. This is another useful resource that I found when I was preparing the class, and it's from Lincoln Financial. I'm not recommending them at all. I just think it's a really good tool because it's a digital asset inventory checklist. So what you're doing here is you're just starting the process by looking at the categories and saying, do I have this, do I have that? Do I have a bank account? Do I have a social security account? Just going through the list and checking. And it's kind of a starting point. So when I teach the class and I have 90 minutes with students, I allocate about 15 minutes for them to work on this checklist, just to identify the categories of digital assets that they have. And then we do a little bit of a debrief. And I'll ask them questions like, What surprised you? Did you have categories that you hadn't really thought about before? So it just gets them going. And it also gets them doing the first step of a 5-step process that I'm going to explain in just a few minutes. Okay, so why do we want to do digital asset planning? Well, first of all, you want to prevent financial losses to someone's estate. I mean, somebody mentioned before cryptocurrency. So imagine a situation where somebody has Bitcoin or any other crypto and nobody knows how to access it, and it's out there in, Etherland, but, people either don't know it exists or it's inaccessible because they don't have the correct, login credentials. So you're talking about a financial loss to the estate. You're also losing a deceased person's story. If a lot of their photographs and music and things like that are stored digitally and nobody knows how to access those, you're losing family history, family photos. You certainly want to avoid identity theft, by having your information secure. You're going to make things easier for your survivors and for your fiduciaries, the executor of your estate, trustees, people like that, even for yourself. I don't know about you, but a day doesn't go by when I'm working that I'm not looking at my digital asset inventory, 4, 5, 10 times, sometimes a day, just to look up the passwords for my various accounts. So it's a benefit for you and also for people that might have to step in, to do things for your estate. It also protects your private information. And then the last one, I don't know if any of you have been in this situation, I think it's really creepy. When you get a birthday reminder about a dead person, and it says it's their birthday and they've been dead for, 8 years. Or even worse, when you get a friend request from a dead person, because that indicates that perhaps there's some hacking going on, because that's a sign that somebody's been hacked when you get a friend request from somebody that you're already friends with. So all of those kind of things are kind of creepy, and that's why you want to do some planning so you can avoid some of these things. Okay, so I kind of broke down this whole process of inventorying and protecting your digital assets into 5 steps. So step 1 is using that checklist worksheet that I just showed you. Just an initial identification of digital assets. That shouldn't take more than 15, 20 minutes just to check through that. And we're going to go through each of those categories one by one so you can see the various things that are included. So that shouldn't take too long. And then a detailed digital asset inventory. So that's going to take some time. Like I said, 4 or 5 hours at the least, could be 10 hours. It's going to take some time. Most people will do, and you can find online if you just Google for password lists, inventories. You don't have to use the Rutgers tool that I developed. There's lots of different things that you can find. A lot of insurance companies put them out, investment companies. They're very plentiful if you just Google them. So most people will do that. They'll just make a list of their usernames, their passwords, any other information that they might need, like the answers to their challenge questions or PIN numbers. It really depends on how the account is set up. And then another option for people is password manager programs, and I'll talk about that on the next slide. But just beware that if you decide to use a password manager program, it's going to take you the same 4 or 5 hours or more to use the password program, because you are still going to have to go through all your accounts, get the username and password, and then input that into the password manager program. So there's no simple, fast way to do this. If you have a lot of digital assets, whether you use a list or you use a password manager, you're still going to have to, account for all of those usernames and passwords and login credentials. Okay, so that's step 2. That's going to be the time-consuming step. Step 3 is to determine your goals for your digital assets. Just think about, well, what do I want to happen with my Facebook account, for example, or Instagram account? And some of the social media people now have an option where you can create a legacy or tribute account, and kind of have it as a memorial to somebody who's passed away. So that's something to consider. Step 4 is to have a conversation with your attorney when you're reviewing your estate planning documents, your will, to make sure that there is language in the estate planning documents that deals with digital assets. And I'll talk a little bit at the end about the RFADA laws that have been passed by most states in the 2010s decade. So your state probably should have legislation that addresses digital assets. And typically what people will want to do is to have somebody who's tech savvy take over that role. And it could be a different person than the regular executor, or it could be the same person. It depends how you want to set it up. And then just like anything else in financial planning, it's not one and done because you need to review and revise regularly. I mean, I don't think a month goes by that I don't add, I don't know, 4 or 5 digital assets, right? You have new websites and you want to create a My Account feature and you've got to have a username and password. So obviously you got to keep it up to date. It's going to be kind of a living document. Okay, so that's the 5-step process. I said I would talk a little bit about the password manager programs. I don't personally use them. Does anybody use a password manager? Okay, a few of you. You know, with these programs, obviously they're businesses, so they're going to charge some fees. Some of them have limited free versions, just like anything else on the internet. They'll kind of hook you with the free version and want you to do some upgrades. And what they're trying to do with these programs is to minimize the hacking and also minimize the need to have all these different passwords. Because if you really follow the advice of the experts, you shouldn't be duplicating any of your passwords, although research shows a lot of people are recycling the passwords from many different accounts. But obviously it's trying to simplify the fact that you don't have to have all these different passwords out there. And I have listed on the slides some of the names of these password manager programs. There's a number of them out there. LastPass probably gets the most publicity. It's the one that a lot of people use, but it's also the one that was hacked about 2 years ago. So these aren't infallible. They can be hacked too, just like any other digital accounts can be hacked. Probably if you're interested in following up on this, I would recommend CNET. I don't know if any of you have used CNET. It's a really good resource for things related to computers and technology. And every year they do a review of the password manager program. So the last one that I found was 2022, and they kind of have a detailed description about each one, including the costs and the features that they have and that sort of thing. So that's one option that you could use. But again, most of the research is showing that if people do anything, and a lot of people don't do anything at all, or they just have Post-it notes stuck on their monitor and for their computer. How many are guilty of that? But if they're doing anything, most people are using notebooks, worksheets like the one I showed you from Rutgers. I had a woman in my class recently who told me she uses index cards. She had a little box of index cards like you might have for recipes, and she has everything organized alphabetically. Not by categories, but like F for Fidelity, V for Vanguard, that kind of thing. So find a system that works for you. If it's cards or worksheets or whatever. Okay, any questions so far? Yes?
What about with the two-factor authentication? When you have your password, but then it still wants to send you a text message. So how would you get your the new person? How would it send it to them? You usually can't have one phone number.
But usually you have to have the will and the death certificate. So
Right, yeah. Death certificates are key, yeah, when you're dealing with a deceased person. Yeah, you definitely have that documentation. Yes?
Two things. My sister uses an address book for her password because it is alphabetized already, a little address.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good idea.
And then I thought of another category that you didn't really talk about, but I'm sure you thought about is I'm very into credit card reward points.
Oh, we're going to get there.
Oh, okay.
We're getting into the categories. Yeah, no, we're there. Yes?
Yeah, just with the password managers, they do have emergency access, which is really, really cool.
Okay, good to know.
After a certain amount of time, you can give someone access to your passwords.
That's good. Good to know. Thank you for sharing that, because I don't have any personal experience with that myself. Okay, so,
One more.
oh, one more, sorry.
My question is that for all of those files or something, what's your suggestion? I have one of those, but I constantly struggle whether I leave that on my desktop, laptop, in the cloud, print a copy, because those constantly need to be updated. What is your suggestion, where to put this?
You mean to put the list, the inventory?
The file list.
Well, I mean, you probably want to have, a hard copy. I have a scanned copy that I scan periodically of my updates that I keep on my laptop, which is password protected, of course. So whatever works for you. I even carry around with me a couple of really key digital assets that I need to have in case I'm walking around and I need to have that information. But I put dashes in it, so because I know what's in those dashes. I just have a little bit of an outline of it, so God forbid my wallet ever got stolen or something, nobody's going to get everything. They wouldn't get the full. So again, you just come up with a system that works for you. Okay, so let me walk you through the different categories of digital assets, and you'll see how many different things people might have. Okay, so we got electronic devices, so obviously things like smartphones, tablets, laptops, desktops. As far as the external hard drive and flash drive, probably the most important thing for those is just to know where they are if people have them. So most people don't password protect a flash drive, but again, you need to know that they are another source of digital data and the location of those if they should be needed. Okay, benefit accounts. So airline miles, how many of you have airline rewards? Okay, so you've got rewards programs for airlines, railroad. I used to take the Amtrak down to Washington quite a bit when I worked for Rutgers and had Amtrak rewards. That kind of thing. Hotel rewards, how many of you have Marriott and got some rewards for today? Okay, so those kinds of things. Retailer reward and loyalty programs. Many people are using things like Rakuten, Bada, some of these rewards programs that people get rewarded for shopping. So these are all kind of what they call benefit accounts, where you're getting some kind of reward or dollars back or whatever it is, just free miles for travel, all those kinds of things. They all have login credentials, so they're part of your digital assets. Okay, email accounts. So whatever your emails are, and some people have several different email accounts. You may have the email account for your employer. You may have, Gmail. Some of these other programs that are a little bit older, Outlook perhaps too. So whatever your email login's in, again, you've got username and password for those. So they're your digital assets. Financial accounts. Well, this is huge. I mean, there's just so many things that might come into this category. Banks, credit unions, brokerage accounts, mutual funds, retirement savings accounts. So you might have an IRA, you might have TSP or a 403B plan, whatever it is. You're going to have accounts for all of those if you want to check your balance. Like I can't wait to get home tomorrow and check the interest that was earned on December, because I have a money market fund that's doing pretty well. So I want to see how much interest I earn. So, that kind of thing. So all those brokerage accounts, retirement accounts, your credit card accounts, if you want to check your balance or you want to pay your bills online, you have to log into that account to see, the information. Employee benefit accounts. So I still actually work for Rutgers as an employee. I mean, I really wanted to be a contractor for them, but they said it was easier to get me back at Rutgers as an employee, as I had been for many years. So, I'll go on the Rutgers site periodically to check my W-2, tax time, to get a PDF of the pay stub, because, they stopped doing pay stubs years ago when people all went to direct deposit. So if you want to get the information from the pay stub, you got to go online for that. If you want to change the percentage of your pay that goes into retirement savings, you probably have to go online with your employer account for that. So lots of different things you'd have at your employer account that you might have to access. If you're using PayPal, Venmo, Zelle, any of those peer-to-peer kinds of payment apps, login information there. Social Security, you know, if you want to pull a benefit statement, you know, because they stopped doing those mailed statements, you know, decades ago. So everything now is Social Security / my account. If you want to go on and pull your benefit statement, you need to go there. I go into OPM periodically just to, if I want to change the tax withholding on my CSRS pension. You know, anything like that. You know, you're going to have more in the financial accounts than anywhere else. Maybe shopping too. But yeah, you're going to have lots of different accounts here for sure. Okay, speaking of shopping, you've got all your online merchant accounts. So you got Amazon, eBay, Etsy, Zappos, if you like shoes, grocery delivery. You know, a lot of people set up accounts during the pandemic and had food delivered to them, so they might have had, Instacart or some of the other grocery delivery services. A lot of people in my area get Kroger delivering to their house. Yeah. So again, all those kinds of merchant accounts that you need to do online shopping, that's a digital asset. And then you may belong to organizations. I mean, just think about AFCPE. If you want to do anything with AFCPE, you have to log in, right? If you want to get on Connected Community, if you want to add a CEU, you know, you're taking a webinar and you want to, you know, get credit for your AFC, you know, CEUs. I do it for the CFP as well. I have to go into Journal of Financial Planning exams and on the FBA website and get credit that way. So you've got, you know, your member organizations, charitable organizations. You know, just think how charity has changed so much in recent years. And sometimes people who have a relationship with a charity might set up some kind of My Account type of thing where they would have to have a login credential. Religious organizations, boards. You know, often when you're on a board, there's special login credentials for board members. If you have tickets to, I don't know, some kind of sports season with Major League Football or baseball or whatever it is, you may have accounts for that as well. So there's just all sorts of things that relate to organizations that you might be affiliated with, that they have a special members-only section that you have to access. Okay, and then this one drives me crazy. Because, you know, we have multiple doctors, right? You know, you see your general practitioner, then you might have specialists for various things. And, for example, you know, I'm a cancer survivor, so I still go to a cancer center once a year just to make sure I have a checkup and everything's okay. And, you know, you have a gynecologist and you have all different kinds of doctors. And many of them are in different healthcare systems and they all have their portals. And it's a pain in the butt. And their systems don't talk to each other, which is really a pain in the butt. But anyway, if you want to get information quickly, like for my doctor, I'll go take a lab test like a week before the appointment, but probably 2 or 3 days after the lab test, they'll send me an email that says your results are available. And so I can see the results actually before I go to see the doctor, which is really kind of nice because then you can kind of formulate questions. So, you know, your healthcare portals, hospitals, of course, will have access, radiologists, you know, health insurance company, you know, if you have to access your account for your health insurance. Many of the health insurance companies, I have Aetna, and I know they're really big on not sending paper statements. So they really encourage you to have an online account and to be able to either review or download your statements through their portal. So again, another healthcare portal. And there may be some others that I've missed, but it's not uncommon for people to have, you know, 8, 10 or more different healthcare digital assets related to the types of care that they're getting. Okay. So then we got photography and music sites. So again, this is some of that priceless personal information that I was talking about before. It may not have a monetary value, but it's important. So Instagram, Snapfish, Shutterfly, Flickr, iTunes, wherever basically you store your photographs and your music, they're also going to have access as well. Because some of these sites obviously you pay for, so they're obviously going to have you log in with a username and password. So they're a digital asset. And then you have publication and subscription accounts. So newspapers, many people have gotten away from print newspapers, but they want to get digital instead. I get the Wall Street Journal, so I was able to log in while I was here to see the Wall Street Journal, because obviously I'm not getting a copy here. I wanted to just check something. So yeah, digital access to newspapers, magazines, blogs, even like MarketWatch has a subscription to it, and they always post these real nice teasers on social media, and I don't have a subscription to MarketWatch, and sometimes I'm bummed out because I really want to see the article. But again, if you have those kind of subscriptions, you've got a digital asset that you have to access. Okay, and then you got your social media. So I got a bunch of them listed there on the slide. You got Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. If you're doing any kind of videos, you might have a YouTube account or a Vimeo account, Pinterest, TikTok. Anybody got a TikTok account? Okay, so TikTok, Instagram's not listed there too. That should be on the list. So all your different social media accounts, obviously they're digital assets as well. And then somebody had mentioned before Bitcoin. So you've got different types of virtual currency. And some of it is like cryptocurrency, like Bitcoin and Ethereum. But a lot of people also have digital assets stored in games, online games. So, Warcraft, poker, gambling. My sister-in-law years ago was really big into Farmville, and she had it tied into Facebook. And I was always constantly getting Facebook messages about how she had just bought these crops, and she had more corn, and it's all virtual crops. But there's value. I mean, you have to pay money to grow your crops in Farmville. It's crazy. But again, some people have money tied up in those types of accounts. So that's a virtual asset as well. And then NFTs, I think they've kind of peaked and kind of gone down, but NFTs were kind of the rage a year ago, where people were paying money not for a picture on the wall, but for a digital image of the picture that might be on the wall. So you didn't own the object, you owned the digital image of the object. And again, that's a digital asset. And then you've got various website accounts. So I use Wix for my website for Money Talk, and so I go into that account pretty frequently. Anytime I write a guest blog post or do a webinar or a podcast for somebody, I go in and put the links into that. So things like that. If you have a website, that's a digital asset. Your hosting service, you have business accounts. And again, all your cloud storage would be in this category too. So if you're using Dropbox or Box or iCloud or Google Drive, whatever your cloud storage platform of choice is, you're going to have digital access that well. Okay, so you can see that you got a lot of digital assets. Did I miss anything? Is there anything that you can think of that I didn't cover? So how many of you now think you have 100 or more digital assets? Probably every hand will go up now, right?
Yeah.
Because, it's just a lot. Yeah, question?
Kids accounts.
Kids accounts.
Kids accounts are like the biggest security risk in our household.
Oh,
So
good
that's another-
point. That is a really good point, because, I developed this class mostly for older adults, but so that's a really good point. You're not only talking about your digital assets, you're talking about your kids' digital assets as well. And making sure that they all have a username and password written down. Good point, yeah.
Is there anything that, or is it just differ from company to company? Like let's say you have 300,000 United Airlines points in your account and you die, is there anything that governs whether family members can take that over or not?
It's company specific.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, there's no uniform law that covers that. So each one, it should be in the fine print somewhere for the program. Probably have find it in 8-point font on page 52 or something, but it's probably there. Yeah. Okay, I only have a few more minutes left, so I just want to share a few more things. One I mentioned briefly was the RFADA law. RFADA stands for Revised Uniform Fiduciary Access to Digital Assets Act. And this was kind of uniform federal legislation. There was a committee of people that created kind of a template for state legislation. And they said, you know, this is the framework, and then states, you're free to kind of tweak it and put your own spin on it, if you will. But this is the basic framework, and then the states have been passing these laws. So I'm a Jersey girl. I know New Jersey passed it in 2017. Florida, where I live now, passed it in 2016. So it was mostly through the 2010s decade that the states were adopting RFADA with their own state spin on it as a template for discussing in estate planning documents what provisions are made for digital assets. So it basically provides the legal authority for fiduciaries to manage digital assets according to the terms of the, you know, the documents that people have, their will and trusts and other things like that. So for example, they might have to pay debts and fees on behalf of the digital estate. Like maybe you have to keep a website going for a little bit longer because it's tied to a business or something like that, and the fee for the website domain comes due. It gives authority for those kinds of things. Typically, the people who oversee digital assets are the people that are involved in the estate administration anyway. So it's the executors, or if people die intestate, they would have an administrator that's appointed by the courts. Maybe a conservator in some situations, a power of attorney agent may be called in to do some of this work. Maybe a person hasn't passed, but they're incapacitated, and some work needs to be done on their digital assets. Trustees, people like that. So there is legislation. So if you haven't had an estate review in quite a while, you want to have a conversation with the attorney to make sure that language from RFADA is included in your documents so that it addresses digital assets. So that's kind of important. Okay, so just to close up, don't ignore your digital assets, you know, because bad things can happen when people don't have a plan for what to do with their digital assets and how to access the information. And then I would just share one thought. It can be overwhelming, as I've mentioned several times, to make this whole list or to import all this information into a passkey of some sort, is just do 10 minutes a day. There's a person in Jersey, Jamie Novak, who does these downsizing seminars at libraries all across the state of New Jersey. And she has this 10-minute a day rule when you're trying to simplify and downsize. And I think it can apply to digital assets as well, is just take 10 minutes a day. Just pick a category and maybe just do a couple of digital assets in that category, and you've taken your 10 minutes. And then the next day you go a little bit more, you write down a few more assets. So maybe it takes you a month to get the whole inventory done. That's okay. It doesn't have to be done in one day if you're just very busy, but just make a point to keep working at it until you get a complete inventory. So I think I'll leave it there. We might have time for a couple questions. Yeah, let's see. Gotta put my glasses on so I can see. Yes, right there.
In your opinion, what state is doing it best when it comes to the estate planning side of digital assets?
I don't really know. I really don't compare states. I haven't really seen anything on that. But I think if not all, most of the states have adopted legislation to address digital assets because, you know, now it's such a commonplace thing. Back in 2010s when they were first talking about it, it was still kind of new. But, you know, it's so mainstream now that it shouldn't be. I would think every state probably has a decent RFADA law in their books. Yeah.
So one thing that I have found is, and I created a spreadsheet like 3 years ago during 2020.
Okay.
Okay? Most of the time I can never remember my passwords. So I have a spreadsheet. But what I've found is keeping it updated is an ongoing thing. Because you know the university makes you change your password every 90 days.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can't repeat passwords, and they have to be 16 digits. And, I mean, all these different things, right?
Oh yeah.
So that's why I can't remember. So then I decided, oh wait, I need to have somebody else have access to this spreadsheet. So I uploaded it to the Google Drive. So my
Okay.
daughter.
Why don't you turn around so everybody can hear you a little bit bit better.
So I uploaded it to Google Drive so my daughter can have access to it. Because even though she's an adult, there are still some things that she has access to or that we both have access to. And so I have it on there. So this spreadsheet is getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
And it's hard to keep it updated, in two different places. Because I updated on my hard drive and I updated on the Google Drive. And it's just overwhelming how big it gets.
Yeah, I think the easiest thing to do in that situation is to come up with some kind of decision rule. Just set a target date. First of the month, I do this.
Right.
I have a couple of things that I do for my business on the first of the month, and they just become decision rules, and I just kind of follow them. And that might be the easiest way to do it, and then you don't lose track. I think there was somebody in the back that, yeah.
This is not estate related, but just digital asset related in general, because I've recently had this thought. Like, do you have any insight on division of digital assets, like in the event of a divorce? Because it just occurred to me that could be
Ooh.
pretty, like when we're talking like digital movies and not the financial stuff is one thing, but like the other digital assets like photos and movies and music and all that kind of stuff, like how does that work if we've shared like an Apple ID and all that kind of stuff for like a decade?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. I've never really seen anything on that. I would imagine financial accounts, typical advice in a divorce anyway is to close joint accounts. So you would have your individual financial accounts at that time. You might just need to, try to get everything out of a cloud server and into the person who doesn't have the account or wants to set up a new account, and just make sure that you get all that information out. That's a common piece of advice too when somebody has passed away, is before you close the Facebook account, make sure somebody can go through there, and if there's pictures that you want to save in the photo archive, that you get those out of there before you close out the account. I think that's a conversation you have with the attorney. I hadn't even thought about that in the case of divorce, but you're right, because so many of the digital assets are held jointly by a couple. Good point. I think there was somebody else there.
So I have a question. Since everyone, how would, someone, like in your estate planning with your will, you have to be very explicit listing the assets?
Oh, no. You never put digital assets into a will. You just refer to the fact that somebody is going to manage those assets. A will is a public document. You will never list your digital assets in a will. What you would probably do with a will is just refer to the fact that you have a digital assets inventory, just like many people in a will refer to the fact that they have a list of untitled property. So, but you never would put that information in a will, because, again, a will can be looked at by anybody. It's public information. Okay, I think one more question. I think we're out of time.
Comment following up on your comment. So like the password managers, and LastPass was hacked, the passwords weren't compromised. It updates your password every time you update it. It asks you, so that you can have an extension on your browser, and you just have to memorize one password, and you can share every password with your daughter. So it's, in my opinion, a better way to keep track of updated passwords. And if you're already comfortable using it digitally, I'm very concerned that you have it open on like Google as opposed to like having it encrypted with something like LastPass.
Good point. Okay, well, thank you all for coming. I hope this will motivate you to try to get some system to log in on your digital assets. Thank you.